people will ask me, what's it like to win a Grammy Award? Because I've been blessed to win 5 of those. And I really honestly tell people, it's awesome. It is an amazing feeling for about 15 minutes. I mean, I had my first #1 song called His Eyes. And it's like, man, this career is going better than I ever imagined. And everybody's excited and everybody's adding more pressure. And yet I'm looking at, my wife and my kids and going, man, I don't know if my marriage, how does my marriage survive this? I call it a black hole. I don't really know words for it other than it just felt like this darkness that I wasn't going to survive and I wasn't going to come back from. 30 seconds before she was put in our arms, she was an orphan, didn't have a name, no future, no hope. And then in this moment, she's put in our arms and all that changes. And now she is ours and nothing, everything that's ours is going to be hers.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Today's guest has spent nearly 4 decades turning faith into melody and heartbreak into hope. Stephen Curtis Chapman is the most awarded artist in Christian music history, a 5-time Grammy winner, 50 #1 songs, and the first in his entire genre to be welcomed into the Grand Ole Opry. But behind the accolades is a man who's walked through deep loss, raised a family that changed the world through adoption, and kept singing about a God who still keeps promises. We're going to talk about the boy with the guitar in Paducah, the husband who wrote I Will Be Here, the father who learned to worship through tears, and the artist who keeps finding new songs in old faith. Stephen, thank you for the music that has carried so many of us through the valley. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Tim and Troy. Thank you guys for having me. And wow, for that intro. I mean, we're done. I think our work is done. You've said if before I start screwing that up and letting people down. Like, man, that sounded, because everything that you said, I was like, wow, Lord, let that be true. Let it continue to be true, and it is true because of His faithfulness and His goodness. And I know what an honor to spend time with another family who has walked through, as we all have, different levels, of heartache, but heartbreak. But man, thank you. Honored to be with you guys.
We'll get into that heartbreak later, but I wanted to start back with that kid in your dad's music store in Kentucky. What dream did he have in his head, and how close did he come to the man you became?
Wow, that's really a great question. And I've thought about that a lot. I in fact, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to do a concert at Carnegie Hall, and it won in a long, long list of things that I never would have imagined as a kid. I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky, and my dad's music store was there and still is actually in Paducah. My dad's still at it at 87 years old, still teaching guitar lessons. And but my dream then, I think the biggest place you could hope to play someday was the Paducah Civic Center. That's where the big stars came, that or the Executive Inn, hotel. And that was as big as I could imagine. So the idea of ever playing on a stage like the Grand Ole Opry or Carnegie Hall, especially, maybe the Opry, but certainly not Carnegie Hall. That's for the real musicians. And so someone asked me when I did do that concert, man, I bet this is a dream come true. And I said then, I've said it many times, as a kid growing up in Paducah, Kentucky, I never dreamed that big. That wasn't even on the, on the agenda anywhere of, gosh, here's something to aspire to. Um, I think my dream, but what has been the dream, that has been fulfilled, is my first song I wrote when I was about 15 years old. And I grew up in the church. I grew up, uh, but my early years, up until I was about 7 years old, were not so much in the church. I was there on Sunday because that's what you did in the buckle of the Bible belt. And my mom took me and my brother to church. But my dad was playing music. He was chasing his music dream. And so he wasn't usually in church on Sunday. Wasn't opposed to it. Grew up around church, but it wasn't. Faith was not a part of our, like an active faith was not a part of our family. It was just kind of culturally what you did until I was 7. And my dad, having grown up without a father in his life, sadly, alcohol destroyed his dad's, well, relationship with his family and then eventually his life. And so music was kind of filling that void for him in a lot of ways, and chasing that. But when I was about 7 years old, my mom and dad really had a transformational experience, with Jesus. And it changed my dad's life. It changed our whole family. And that's when his music began to change as well. Grew up, learning country music, bluegrass music, and still love it to this day. My dad still does. But instead of, my first song was Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues. So, I was on my way to prison at 6 years old. The first song I learned, but my dad then began to love Bill Gaither music and songs about, the how life changing God's grace was, and he had experienced it in his own life. My dad had, and my mom and our whole family. So that music became important to me as a kid growing up. And so my first song was a song called Well Done. And it was written again as a teenage kid. It was a terribly written song, but it had a lot of heart. And the heart of it was, I'd read the scriptures, read the story about what's called the parable of the talents, and the master calls three servants together and entrusts to each of them a different amount of talents, amount of money to use wisely as he goes away on a trip, and he comes back. And if you know the story, he lines the three servants up, and one of them has done very well, doubled what he was entrusted with, and the other one a little bit less that he was given, but he also worked hard and doubled what he was entrusted with. But then one of the servants came and said, "Well, I was afraid and didn't want to screw this up, so I've just buried it, and here's what you gave me, but I haven't done anything with it." And as the story is told, by Jesus, as the servant then that the ones who have done well with what they were given and entrusted, the master says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And that story impacted me even as a kid. And I would hear people say, "Think God's given you talent." And so I guess maybe that's why that word jumped off the page for me. So I wrote the first song around that idea. And the chorus of the song was, "When Christ comes, when the master comes back, I want to hear him say, 'Well done.'" And so in that regard, I would say that kid in Paducah, Kentucky, has been able to see that dream not fully realized, obviously, because I'm still here. But I believe that, I've been able, by God's grace, I mean, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, sometimes 20 steps back, very imperfectly. But by God's grace, I've been able, I feel like, to be on a journey that I believe he has been able to say, you're doing well with what I've entrusted to you. And I'm really grateful for that.
You once thought you'd study medicine before music pulled you away. What is the story there? Funny enough, I actually wanted to be a heart surgeon if football didn't work out for me.
Well, so there you go. You probably would have come much closer to being a heart surgeon than I would have come. My pre-med, and I call it, to be fair, it was really pre-med, because I wasn't anywhere close to, when I say I was a pre-med student, sometimes people are like, "Whoa, that's impressive." And I'm like, no, don't be impressed. I started out because my dad sat me down and said, "I think you should go get a real job." Um, music's great. My dad said, I've done it, and God has blessed me with his little music store. But I remember his words very distinctly. He said, "It's really hard to feed a family playing a guitar." And he said, "I've done it by the grace of God, but I would love to see you, do maybe have an easier path. So go get a real job. Music's amazing. I think you're very gifted, but so few people that set out to make it, in music actually make it. Um, I got to think that's very similar to a career in the NFL. A lot of guys sign up for Pee Wee football. How many of those kids, end up playing in the NFL? A very, very small number. And the same is true for music. And so I thought, well, I was always a pretty compliant son, and, tried to do what my dad thought was wise. And so I looked at the list, and truly this is about how much thought I put into it. I looked at the list of, potential majors, and I saw pre-med. I'm like, that's what you do if you're going to be a doctor or a dentist or something. And that's about as real of a job as I guess you can get. So I'll just go do that. That should be easy. Right. And it turned out it was not. Calculus and chemistry classes right out of the gate, at a little school in Northern Kentucky, Georgetown College. Um, they were just kind of eating my lunch. I was not doing well at all in those classes, and I'd done well in school up to that point. But suddenly, college level calculus and chemistry and all of that were a lot more challenging than I had had, and music um, was, just growing in my heart, my love for it, my desire to write songs. And I had started to get some opportunities the summer before I went to college. I got a job at a little amusement park that used to be in Nashville, Tennessee, called Opryland, USA. It's not there anymore. It turned into a big shopping mall several years ago, sadly, but it was built around the Grand Ole Opry. And kind of the Grand Ole Opry, outside of the doors of the Grand Ole Opry house there in Nashville, was this small but very cool amusement park, and mainly known for its live music shows. It had some rides and roller coasters and all that kind of stuff, small scale, but it had these amazing live music shows, and I got hired for one of those the summer before I went to college to be a pre-med major. And during that summer, I began to meet people who took an interest in my songwriting and began to encourage me. And actually, it was through one of those guys that that I met that summer in Nashville, who would take a cassette tape. If some of you know what those were back in the day, I had a little tape recorder and recorded a couple of my songs that I had written, and gave this tape to some guy that I met after one of my little shows there in the park in Nashville. And he, as only God could kind of write the story, he would end up handing this tape to Bill Gaither, the guy that wrote the songs I grew up singing with my family in church, arguably one of the greatest, most influential songwriters, probably, of gospel and Christian music in my lifetime, certainly. And this guy would hear my songs and take an interest, Bill Gaither, in helping me and giving me my first publishing deal, which was the first step to becoming a songwriter, which would be the first step to me getting a chance to record my music. Um, so to your point, Tim, it was the opportunity to, and I'm not even sure I would have healed or helped heal anyone if I'd stayed in medicine. I'm really leery of what might have happened. But instead, God did, as you uh, beautifully put it, allowed me to be a part of healing um, the souls and the hearts uh, of of people that might hear my songs and my music, which has been a pretty remarkable thing. It still is amazing to me every time someone comes and says, "Man, this song at this point in my life, God really met me in this way, and it was really a part of how God rescued me, helped heal my marriage, helped save me from, you know, despair, from taking my life, from or introduced me to a relationship with Jesus." I mean, all of those things again are obviously beyond anything I could have hoped for, but certainly the dream uh, as a kid, being realized that I love how Oswald Chambers said it once, and I would say this is very much true, Tim, of how you're stewarding even this opportunity in this season of your life, but so you'll appreciate it. But Oswald Chambers, the writer of the great devotional My Utmost for His Highest, says one of his great goals in life would be to have honorable mention in another person's personal relationship with Jesus. And I just thought about what a cool way to say that. That just someone in there talking about their journey of coming to know who Jesus is, they'd go, oh, and there was this guy, there was this lady, there was this person that, that has mention in my story of coming to know who Jesus is.
Hmm. How old were you when that he took that cassette tape and he picked it up?
I was 18 years old. I graduated from high school, and I was the pre-med major. That was my one semester when I was taking those classes, and I literally was just thinking, "There's no way I can do this." And I got a phone call, um, and someone said, "Hey, there's a message for you. Call this guy." And it was the guy that I'd met that summer in when I was working at Opryland before I started college. So I was 18 years old that summer and met that guy. He took my cassette tape back to Indiana, where Bill Gaither was from. He was a student at a little school, Anderson College, where Bill and Gloria Gaither had started a music program, and he knew Bill. He'd been friends with Bill and Gloria for a long time, and he said, "Hey, I got this cassette tape of this kid that I met this summer in Nashville that writes gospel music. I think you ought to hear it." And that's what led to me getting that phone call right in the middle of struggling through calculus and chemistry classes. I get a phone call from Bill Gaither saying, "Hey, I'd like to publish some of your music." So I called my dad promptly and I said, "Dad, I think I might be able to have a real job making music because Bill Gaither just called." And my dad said, "Hey, yeah, that might work out. Go ahead and chase that a little bit."
Did you realize at that time? I mean, when you're 18, like when I was 18, I would have swore I was playing in the NFL and I didn't even come close. But would you like when you were 18, did you realize that you had that talent, or did you think it was just like I guess was it more of a hobby, or did you know what
Yeah.
it could be?
At that point, I would have said it's a hobby. I would have loved to dream, that it could be something, um, you know, bigger than that. But honestly, part of the deal with me is I was not the singer growing up in my family. My dad is a great singer, and my brother is a guy who could sing the phone book, and people would stop and go, "Man, that's a great voice." I didn't have that gift. Um, Honestly, I think that's why I started writing songs because that's how I found my voice. Because I kind of had a soft, sort of timid voice when I was a kid. I was always the background singer. I was the guy who supported my brother and my dad and my mom. We'd sing in church together, and my dad would sing lead, or my brother would sing the lead part, and I was always the guy singing the harmonies. It was the old, daddy sang bass, mama sang tenor. Me and little brother joined right in there. I was the little brother, just kind of joining in, but I learned to play guitar. That was my thing. I wanted to be the best guitar player I could be because that was sort of what I thought I could excel in that. Um, and so I went to Nashville actually when my brother and I auditioned to get that job at Opryland in that amusement park. I went as a guitar player. I didn't even go to audition as a singer. So my idea of ever becoming a recording artist or any of that was like way far. I mean, that wasn't even in the cards at all. I thought maybe my brother would be a, a star or could be an artist, and I could back him up. Maybe a duo because we were always the Chapman brothers growing up. And so when we went to audition at Opryland, I auditioned, tried out as a guitar player, not even as a singer, and sort of a fluke. The judges, the guys doing the auditions, as I was playing guitar for my brother, they said, "Hey, Steve." They looked down, saw my name, Steve and Herb Chapman Brothers, and said, "Do you sing too?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but not like him." And they said, "Well, sing something for us." And so I ended up getting the job almost as an accident, not thinking I was, even good enough to get that job. So all that to say, it was probably, I thought of it as a hobby that somewhere way back in my wildest dreams, maybe I could, have a career as a guitar player, maybe as a songwriter for other people. That was probably as far as I would have dreamt it at that point.
It's so cool that you hear a story like that where it's some judge at this, for this audition, he cared enough that he asked, he took an interest in your voice and cared enough to ask. He didn't get anything extra by asking if you could sing too, right? That's just pure
Right.
passion. And yeah, I love that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Very cool.
When did songwriting stop being a craft and start feeling like a call?
There's when I was first starting out, um, I used to worry about, I would hear people talk about being called, especially into ministry. That's a common thing that you hear people say. Boy, I remember when God called me into ministry. And I remember thinking, I don't know that I can point to a time. This sort of just has evolved, and I've taken the next step and the next step. And I was thinking I was going to be some sort of a doctor or dentist, something in, medicine maybe, but I didn't ever really have a passion for that. I always just had a passion for music. But, I was it a calling? Did I, and so I battled with that a little bit, honestly, for a long time. And then I remember, again, it's funny, so often the books I've read, I feel mentored in many ways by guys that will never meet this side of heaven because they had gone on ahead of me. But Oswald Chambers, again, there was a great entry in the Utmost for his highest devotional, and he's talking about the way he put it that I remember was what we call the process, God calls the end. Basically, meaning that we think that we're on a journey to get to some end result, and yet God shows up in the day by day, the steps, and He's a lot more in our lives, more interested in that journey and that process than this finish line. The finish line is coming for all of us, wherever that ends up being, but he will lead that. But it's more about the process, and that word process. I began to realize the calling in my life to with music was a journey and a process, and I'm still on the journey and still in process. But as I was able to kind of make peace with that, I realized that in my case, it wasn't a Damascus Road, blinding light, or a voice or a hovering figure at the foot of my bed saying, this is the way, walk in it. In fact, that scripture has become special to me too. The scripture that says, you'll hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, when you turn to the left or the right. I love that verse. Implies movement, implies, that you're on your way to pre-med, maybe, and you're going somewhere. You're not sitting still waiting. Okay, God, tell me which way to go. You're taking the next step. Yeah, and then as you look back and you go, wow, I see where God whispered, yeah, let's go left here, or let's go right. Sometimes you don't even hear it. You don't even see it happen. And you think I'm just wandering in the darkness. But I am one who has been amazed as I look back and see how God has been faithful to direct the steps. And I think, honestly, to answer the question, Tim, it probably was a calling before I even knew what that word meant, before it became a craft. I think my first song was not well crafted at all. It was just passion. It was pure passion. It was kind of ugly. But I love, my buddy Mac Powell says that, even if you have an ugly baby, you love them all the same. My first songs were some ugly babies, but I loved them all the same because they came from my heart, and there was passion there for sure. And then it was Bill Gaither. It was as time went on that I would begin to learn the craft of songwriting and do whatever you do with excellence and study to show yourself approved and all those things. I got to believe maybe that's similar, to you guys in the sports world. You start out with pure passion. You don't know what you're doing. You just know I got a football and I got some buddies and I'm just going to run through them and get to the other end. And then you realize, oh, there's a whole lot to learning this craft, that comes with it. And if you're fortunate enough to get to do that, and I certainly have been.
The song For the Sake of the Call marked a turning point in your life. What was the risk that song asked you to take?
Yeah, I was probably at a point when my music had just been, taken off in ways I never had imagined. First album came out, record label did a favor to a producer who they, wanted to produce a lot of other records for them. And he came in with this hillbilly from Paducah with a bad mullet haircut and said, "Hey, I think this guy's got something to offer." And he's not a great singer necessarily, but boy, he writes some songs that I think would connect with the heart of people. And so these guys did the record label Sparrow Records kind of did a favor for him and said, "Yeah, we don't hear like this guy being, something that would necessarily be real successful, but we can hear something in there. We'll put a little bit of money to it and do a 3-song." It was actually a 3-song recording. It wasn't even a full album to start with, and did the 3 songs, and people responded more than I think the record label even expected. Certainly more than I even expected. I think it was the timing. It was something about people. People have said of my music for a long time that they feel like, a friend sitting in the passenger seat while they're just having a conversation with somebody, just encouraging them, listening to them, giving them some feedback, of what it looks like just a day to day. Man, life is hard, but God shows up and gives us what we need for, our marriage, for parenthood, for life, whatever it is. My songs kind of come from that place, and people would begin to respond to them. And so things started to grow, and the next record, they got more excited about it. Then, songs went to #1 on the radio charts, and then, I won, awards, Dove Awards or whatever. And it's like all of a sudden this thing starts to grow. And I think I found myself really beginning to realize, wait a minute, I've got a platform here that I never really even understood that I was going to have. And what's it going to be? What's faithfulness with this going to look like to, use this platform to continue to encourage other people in their journey of following Jesus? And what does it even mean for me to call myself a Christian and use that word? And I was reading and trying to take as much in as I could, because suddenly I felt like, I am not only learning the craft of songwriting, but also, in a sense, the how do I best steward this platform that I now have, and trying to read and trying to absorb, as much good stuff as I could, not only from God's word, but from other books that I felt like would really challenge me and teach me. And I read a book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which was, for a Paducah boy, it was heavy duty reading. I mean, this is a, great story of an amazing man who, during the Nazi, regime and Hitler's, reign, was very active in trying to be a man of faith, and a great theologian, and wrote this book called The Cost of Discipleship, about what it means to follow Jesus. And obviously following Jesus, in his case, cost him his life. And it was very challenging to me to begin to go, what does it mean to really call myself a Jesus follower, a Christian? What it means to be a disciple. And what does discipleship mean? I mean, I'd grown up hearing that word, but what does that even mean in real time for a real guy living in, at the time, 1994 or whatever, and trying to raise kids and love my wife, and, messing that up, and all of that. And so that was a pretty big, for me, a turning point, personally, of just, I guess, going deeper and saying, Jesus, as the song said, I came across this phrase in the book for the sake of the call, or the book Cost of Discipleship, where Dietrich Bonhoeffer uses that phrase. To follow Christ is to live and be willing to die for the sake of the call. It's not for any other reason. It's not because you're going to get famous. It's not because you're going to get, you're going to have a big platform, whatever. To really follow Jesus means that he has said, come follow me. And you choose by his grace. He gives you, faith to choose to say, that's how I want to live my life. And it's not a one-time deal. It's an ongoing daily decision. And, to choose to take up your cross and follow Jesus again. And, but that all was very much, I think, a really important point in my journey, to just sort of drive the stake deeper in the ground, of what I'd already been singing about and believing, but to really make that sort of the mission statement for my music and for my life.
On a much more shallow note,
It's
how did your life
all good.
change going from, you got people saying, oh, we don't think this guy has it. I don't know. Let's only do 3 songs, to being a number one, hits number one on the radio. What does life look like, the day before that comes out? Are you doubting yourself because they're doubting you? And then what does life look like X amount of days later when you're a number one, you hit number one?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm sure Tim knows this, and you too, Troy, in your own journey. I think any of us who have had success at whatever we have done, but especially if you have unexpected success from without and from within, people will ask me, what's it like to win a Grammy Award? Because I've been blessed to win 5 of those, and I really honestly tell people, it's awesome. It is an amazing feeling for about 15 minutes. And I said, but then immediately what comes right on the heels of it, no sooner have you gotten your award, you're taking your pictures, you're back in the press room, congratulations. You're like, the feelings of just, this is greater, one of the greatest moments of my life, to the pressure and the expectation, because as soon as you get to the end of that, taking those pictures, in the press junket or whatever, you've got record label executives and managers and booking agents and everybody standing there going, high five. Now, man, the next record, the next tour, it's going bigger and better. Man, this was platinum. Let's go double platinum on the next record, or whatever. And it's just human nature, it's just, because the music business is the business. And, and so in the midst of all of that, and inside, though, to be really honest, and that's it. I'm as honest as I can be. I am looking at that going, are they sure they got the right guy? Somebody's going to ask for a recount, because I'm not really that great of a singer. I've still got that voice in my head. I've still got that little voice going, man, if they really knew, they're going to catch on to you before it's over with, and that's a blessing and a curse. I think, I'm not saying there's not been a battle with pride. Mine is probably more of an inverted pride. It's more of an insecurity a lot of times, of going, I don't know if I'm as good as they might think I am, and so I think that process has been, part of the journey. And then just dealing with the expectations and going, man, the next thing, and going, yeah, but my next thing is also to love my wife and my kids and being a dad and showing up and, all of that stuff. And we all know there's plenty of, in both the sports world and the music world, entertainment world, plenty of families that, are kind of the collateral damage and marriages of a successful career. And that's why I wrote a song like I Will Be Here that, Tim, you mentioned earlier. That song came at one of those moments in my life of going, man, I got a number one song. I had my first number one song, a song called His Eyes. And it's like, man, this career is going better than I ever imagined. And everybody's excited and everybody's adding the more pressure. And yet I'm looking at, my wife and my kids, and going, man, I don't know if I don't know if my marriage, how does my marriage survive this? How do I survive? How do I be the kind of dad that I want to be and the kind of husband that I want to be? And can you do both? And I believe you can, but I'm not sure. And so, that's where so many of these songs came from that struggle in that process. So I don't know if that answers the question,
Yeah,
but
no.
that's been the journey.
We had John Driscoll Hopkins. He's the bass player for the Zach Brown band. He does a lot of bluegrass stuff too. And
Oh yeah,
he was on. They were on tour, and he said they were playing. I think it was our episode, like episode 15. And he said they're on tour and they're playing like bars and stuff, like anywhere they could get a show, they were playing it. And
yeah.
then they took like a little break, and one of their songs in that break just flew up the charts, hit number one. And he said when they came back from the break, they had like security on their tour and they were going, he's like, it
Yeah.
was like almost unrecognizable.
Yeah, like what in the yeah, yeah. That's funny. I mean one of my first deals I remember um I played, and this is just in my experience, my version of that is, God is really good. I mean, one of my prayers right out of the gate was, God, I know there's a verse in the Bible that says God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And I think right at the beginning, I thought, even if it's being the greatest guitar player in the world, there's plenty of opportunity. If I could have chased that dream down, I'd have had a lot of pride. Like, see, man, I did this thing, and check me out. I'm going to shred and melt your face, with this playing. And I never became that good of a player, but that was probably the dream. But I remember I just won my very first Dove Award, which was, again, not a Grammy Award, but in my world, the world of Christian music, that was the Grammy. That's kind of the equivalent to the Christian Grammy Awards. So I was feeling pretty dang good. I mean, I won this award. It was like, riding pretty high. And I went to the next day, I had to leave the next morning to go do a television show in Canada, and kind of a Christian television network up there. And I remember I walk in, got my guitar, kind of set it down, and I'm thinking, man, here I am, Dove Award winner, this is pretty cool. And some guy walks up to me and says, hey, where are the mic stands? I'm trying to set up here and I'm trying to find the mic stand. He thought I was like, a crew guy, and I thought, well, so much for being the big deal. This guy just wants to, know where the mic stands are. He's not like, oh, you're the Dove Award winning artist. So I think it's just moments like that throughout my life. I'm like, thank you, Lord. I get it. Okay. It's a good reminder.
Well, God always knows how to humble us, right? Stephen, The Great Adventure gave Christian music an anthem. What adventure did you not see coming when you wrote it?
It was that one surprised me for sure. And when you say an anthem, I mean, I do remember, starting to go to, everywhere I went, Christian camps, like, man, that was our summer camp theme song, or Vacation Bible School, man, that's our summer song. And then all the, everybody started making their hand motions and their, dance moves and all that stuff to that song, which interestingly enough, that song was written, even though it kind of became in many ways sort of this anthem. It was actually written from a pretty heavy time in my life, when, as I was talking about earlier, the success was growing, and I'm trying to figure out how do I handle that and still be what I've committed to my family and to my wife. And my wife had been struggling with depression, and that came to the surface in the midst of all of the success. At this time when we ought to just be high-fiving and like, this is the greatest. This is, more than we ever imagined when we started our life together with $50, in our pocket. And yet it was taking a toll on my wife, and something that I think she'd battled her whole life. But all of a sudden, the pressure of all of this was bringing it to the surface. And here I'm trying to, love her. And the song on The Great Adventure, actually, that addresses that, called Go There With You, that I wrote for my wife. So that song came out of me really wrestling with, feeling kind of like, I don't think I'm doing a lot of things well, and I'm kind of failing. And had a meeting with my pastors, a couple of guys in my life at that time that were just an encouragement to me, and also with my record label and my manager. And I had the pressure, but I also had the support of these guys. And I just broke. I just fell apart and just weeping and sitting in their office. And I know my record label was looking like, uh-oh, this guy's cracking, we're losing him. And, but I said, guys, there's just a lot here and I'm trying to hold it, but I don't know if I can should keep doing this. And it was out of that some of the things that my very dear friend and pastor and mentor for years, Scotty Smith, said to me, that I left there feeling like the grace of God is the one thing that there's no pressure, there's no expectation to live up to, because Jesus has already accomplished all of it and for me. And all I have to do is receive that and rest in that. And it was like, for me, it's, and it's hard to say in a short amount of time, but basically I just left that meeting and that day feeling very different, from this weight to this just surrender. Like, okay, God, I'm following you and you're going to take care of all these details. I'm going to do the best I can and put people around me, but I'm just going to trust you. And that song kind of came out of that. Like, let's go, here we go, wherever this goes. Now I say in the song, we'll go on mountaintops so high and we'll go through valleys, so low. And, I think, at that point, you only know what you know at that time, I had no idea that life would take my family and me on the journey of adoption, which would transform our lives and would be truly a great adventure, that take us to China, to adopt 3 daughters, that great adventure would take us to the deepest, darkest place of losing our youngest daughter in a tragic accident, and how that would impact my entire family, and the music that would eventually come from that. So yeah, I didn't really know. It's one of those things, probably good that I didn't know all that I was writing about. I probably would have backed away and said, I don't think I'm going to write that song. I think I'm going to hand this off to somebody else, because if I'm signing up for this, I didn't see all this coming. But again, I'm very, very grateful that as I did write in this song, God has been there every step of the way, or I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you guys, for sure.
It seems like throughout your journey, even when you, like, I mean, I get it. I kind of get the self-doubt when you're a young kid and you don't really know, and you say, I'm from this podunk town and who knows. But
Yeah.
even when you're having great success, it seems like you still had, some self-doubt. What helped you keep pushing through those barriers of saying, I don't even know if I should be here. Are you sure they got the right guy?
Yeah.
How did you keep
Yeah.
pushing through those and keep achieving more?
I think, first of all, just having people, around me, who believed probably more in me than maybe I even believed in myself at times. People who really, who loved me. I mean, my wife, Mary Beth, and I've been married 41 years, and she would be the first person that I would say, she's the one that has had dreams, and probably belief in me and for me. I mean, she's been very honest, and she's also, I say in a song that I wrote for her recently, and I've said for many years, she's my biggest fan and my toughest critic by far. She's the one that, you come home from, like, selling out whatever big, concert, and she comes and was like, man, I'm sure they loved you last night in, Los Angeles, but, and that's great. Good for you. Yay, raw. But I just need somebody to take out trash and change some diapers. Can you just do that, please? Like, I'm so unimpressed with that other guy. But at the same time, to have somebody who believes, who's believed in me and cheered me on, in ways that I probably wouldn't have even, believed in myself. And then, there is that part of me that, I think it's just always been really driven to, to just do the very best that I can with what I have. It's a competitive part. It's just a drivenness, that has again, keeping it in check. It's probably why, those moments when, I've ended up in tears sitting in, offices of my pastor or friends or counselors' offices or whatever, because sometimes uh, that drive to succeed, it's a two-edged sword, right? It's really, really good. It can carry you, and I think God uses it. I mean, my favorite movie of all times, Chariots of Fire. There's so many great quotes in that movie, but there's one that I've always loved when Eric Little is a runner and his father comes to see him. His father's the missionary, the spiritual, you know, uh, true north of the family, and Eric is battling with this: do I go be a missionary and do God's work, or do I keep running because God made me fast? And he says, when I run fast, I feel God's pleasure. It's like, I feel God made me for that, but is that really doing God's work? And I remember his father says, run in God's name and let the world stand in wonder. Basically, do so well what you do, run fast, win the race, be great, but then give the glory to the one who gave you that ability, and let the world stand back and go, that's one of the best runners that's ever lived. But then you take that opportunity to do it in God's name. And I love, many athletes that have continued to do that. We see that often. And again, taking the platform, obviously, that you guys have to do this, that you got from being a great, great athlete, world class, the world standing in awe. This guy's amazing. That's, I think, that drive, when it's put in the right place, is what keeps you going in those times too. When you really do think, I don't know if I have what it takes, but I can work harder than anybody. I think that's always kind of been probably a big part of, what's driven me as well.
You've lived through some of the brightest stages, but also the darkest nights. What have grief and faith taught you that success never could?
I think the words, God is faithful. Um, we will say that a lot of times. Boy, look at the faithfulness of God, in Christian circles, I guess, related to ministry, to success. Man, God's blessing that ministry. Look how it's growing. Or, in my ministry, man, boy, God's really blessing. God's Look how faithful God has been. In you using your gifts for Him, and now you've won awards. Um, and I don't discount that. That has been the faithfulness of God for sure in my life. But it's also, God is just as faithful when you write your songs or do whatever and don't win the award. That doesn't that we use that language, but that isn't a measurement of the faithfulness of God. When you walk through the darkness, and as my family and I, specifically through the darkest place of losing our youngest daughter, Maria, and the impact of all of that on my entire family, something that we carry with us, um, every day, and you make choices to trust and keep trusting God. Um, but that is when you find out if it's really enough, if it's really true. When you put all you have, kind of push all the chips, on that side of the table, say, all right, God, I have nothing else. I'm going to trust you. And you find that to be enough to sustain your broken heart and your marriage, that most don't survive the loss of a child because the weight of carrying that grief and that trauma and all of that. Um, and you see the realities of all of that. You feel the full force of the, the attacks of darkness and grief and the enemy and all of that. and yet God sustains you, and you can stand not on the complete other side, because we won't be on the other side until heaven, but you can take the next step and the next breath, and see that it has been God's presence with you, God's grace and God's faithfulness that has carried you and kept carrying you when success and nothing else even matters anymore, in light of that kind of weight and that kind of darkness. That's what, it's like all the songs that I wrote, I had to decide at a point, can I still sing these songs? There was a moment where I thought, after we lost our daughter, and honestly, I just thought, I don't think it'll ever feel right to laugh again or just feel lighthearted, because my heart's just so heavy and so broken and so sad right now. And I don't know how I'll ever, I'd hear laughter across the room somewhere when we were gathered to, in those early days and probably weeks and even months. And I'd hear laughter and I'd think, man, I don't think I'll ever laugh again, or feel that kind of just lightness, to be able to smile and feel joy. And, as time would go, and we would begin to be able I began to make choices to say, okay, I'm going to sing these songs, because if they were true then they're still true now. I may sing them from a different place, when I sing "Saddle Up Your Horses, We Got a Trail to Blaze," or whatever, those songs. I'm like, no, that's actually, now I can see it from this other side, and I actually believe it more now than when I wrote it. Not because I didn't believe it then, but it wasn't coming from that place of the depth, that I've walked and that I've been now. So it's actually just made all of the things that I've written and sung all these years even that much more true, for me to say and sing.
Stephen, I hate to even bring this up because there is nothing more special than kids, but I want to ask about the songs that became personal after the tragedy of your youngest daughter, Maria's passing. What did lament sound like in your house?
Well, honestly, Tim, I didn't think I would write songs. I remember actually overhearing someone say around it was, I think, at one of the gatherings after we lost our daughter, Maria, that someone mentioned, boy, can you imagine the songs that Stephen's going to write having walked through this? And to be really honest, it made me mad. I mean, I thought, man, I'm not going to write songs about this. Are you kidding? This is deeper than any song can go. In fact, I probably won't write any more songs. I'm not even sure I'll sing my songs anymore, because it's like, the everything changes in a moment like that. And it took time. I will say, during that darkest day and moment, and even at the hospital, I've shared this many times before, but when we were at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, just first finding out that our daughter, who had been airlifted to the children's hospital there, had not survived and wasn't with us any longer. I remember feeling just this sense of, I call it a black hole. I don't really know words for it other than it just felt like this darkness that I wasn't going to survive and I wasn't going to come back from. And I remember even praying and just saying, God, you can't ask this of me. I can't lead my family through this. I can't survive this, and much less lead my family through it. And I remember just feeling a darkness kind of sucking me in. That's why I use the black hole, when I talk about it, because it just felt like I'm going to get sucked into this despair and this darkness, and there's not going to be anything of me left when I go here. And as I was feeling that kind of that pull into that, I remember just all I could think to say is just from Job, I had read and had heard the song, "Blessed be your name, you give and you take away." And in that moment, I remember just saying, God, all I know to do is to just say with my words, even though I don't really can't even comprehend what I'm saying, other than I'm just going to speak it. I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to worship you. You give, you take away. I'm going to trust that you are in this, and even in this, that you are God and that you are good, and so I'm going to worship you. And it almost seemed in that moment just crazy, but when I did, I felt like I was like this force was pulling me back from that black hole in that moment. When I would say that, when I would just literally kind of breathe it, squeak it out through tears, whatever. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. And it was like when I would do that, I could feel this sense of me getting pulled back from that darkness. And I had enough breath to take another, or enough, oxygen to sort of breathe again, one more breath. It's like, okay. And I felt like a little bit clearer. And then it would sort of, the wave would come and the darkness would come. And then I would say that again. And then that song, there was a song, "Blessed Be Your Name" by my friend Matt Redman, that he had written kind of around that Job verse, that became kind of the only song I could sing during those darkest moments. And so I think from that, I began to recognize even the Psalms as I started reading the Psalms that I'd read for many years. And I had never really noticed how many of those Psalms that are these great, we write songs, about, worshiping God, and better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere, is one of the songs I remember straight from the Psalms. And these, great celebration songs. And suddenly I started realizing how many of those Psalms actually start with verses like, "How long, O Lord, are you going to forget me forever?" They're coming from a very dark place of hopelessness, where the psalmist, King David, or whoever the psalmist is, writing from this place of despair, but then just saying, "But I'm going to choose to believe this. I'm just going to push all the chips on that side of the table and say, God, I'm going to choose this because this is the only thing that will sustain me." And in doing that, then the back part of those Psalms, start to make sense. I'm just trusting you, God. It's like, "Soul, why are you so downcast in me? Hope in God." I love that song because it was like literally the psalmist is kind of talking to himself, having a self conversation, like, why are you giving up? Just trusting God. You got to keep trusting God. My hope is in you. And so I'm going to trust you and I'm going to worship you. And that's where the songs, the laments that gave way for me. And I did end up writing songs on an album, and I wasn't even making an album. I wasn't going to even release the songs. I wasn't sure. I just knew I had to let these songs out. And it became an album called "Beauty Will Rise." And I even thought when I recorded those songs, I thought, man, this is a people are not going to want to put this one on and go, "Hey, let's listen to Curtis Chapman's new album." It's like, let's get really, really sad and bummed out and just, but those songs were laments for me, to use your word, Tim. And it was part of the healing journey and the process to be able to cry out to God. And it really began to help me understand so much more of what so much of the scripture is. It is crying out to God, and God never saying, "Don't you dare talk to me like that." God never says that, and that was such a gift to me to begin to realize that God never says, "Don't you dare." He says, "I can take it, bring it all. Come to me, pour your heart out to me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the anger, the confusion, all of that." And I'm so grateful that he welcomes all of it.
I never thought of it like that. That's moving. Stephen, was there a moment when you almost quit music? And if so, What pulled you back?
I would say there have been probably several moments. Um, and, earlier on, it would have been moments of thinking, do I need to quit doing this because of the toll that it's taking on my family, on my marriage? And yet, this is all I know how to do. I didn't do very well in pre-med. I don't think that's where I'm going to be able to feed my family. I can feed my family doing this. Um, and yet, that was, I think, every one of those times I would go again to, there's wisdom in counsel, the counsel of many. I'd bring counsel around me, friends, counselors, my pastor, my wife, and say, is this what God's saying, or is this when I need to pull the plug on this? To take care of my family. And I would always be, from those moments, encouraged to say, no, it's not gonna be easy. Nothing you do is gonna be easy and always, just fall into place. But it would be, I feel like God would put more wind in my sails to go forward. And never did I get, a confirmation to, yeah, this is the time to pull the plug, to stop doing this. And somewhere in there, I would begin to realize, wait a minute, there's also an enemy who hates everything that any of us do that reflect the heart of God, that bring light into the darkness. There is a real enemy, and we're not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting against spiritual powers and principalities. And like those things would remind me, oh, maybe that's part of why this is so hard. Um, I will meet people, in the work that my wife and I do with adoption. And, three of our daughters adopted from China. And then we started helping other families through our ministry, Show Hope, in the adoption journey. And often feeling like that's a big reason, maybe the main reason God gave me these songs in the first place, was to have this platform to speak to the world and to, the church, to about God's heart for children without a family, adoption. And I'll meet kids and I'll meet families sometimes after a concert, and they'll come up with tears in their eyes and they'll say, thank you for you guys doing what you did with the platform that you have to talk about adoption. And this is our son, our daughter. We were inspired by your music. We were inspired by you and Mary Beth's story that you told on Focus on the Family or on Larry King Live or wherever. And so often I'll call my wife afterwards and I'm like, it was everything I could do to just not break down standing there talking to them. And sometimes I do. Sometimes just the tears come, because it's like I had this moment of going, oh, oh. So that's why this has been so hard sometimes, because these really amazing, great things that are happening, they're so much bigger than me. And it's not like I go, wow, that's, look what we did. It's almost like, no wonder it's been so hard, sometimes. And no wonder I've wanted to just hang this up at different times. Um, and for sure, at the moment, as I mentioned, when we lost our daughter, Maria, and I wasn't even sure, could I keep doing music? And even then, it was more a sense of, you know, these songs and declaring and saying these things are more important now than ever before. I feel like, not only for those that are going to hear them, but just for me. This is a way I keep remembering what is true. What is most true is to just keep singing these songs, keep declaring them, and saying, this is what I believe is true.
How did Cinderella change after the tragedy, and what does it mean to sing it now?
I almost didn't sing that one anymore. In fact, the first time I stood on stage after we lost our daughter, Maria, um, I thought, I won't sing that song tonight, and I won't sing it. I did decide to go back on stage. I did finally get peace that, yeah, I do need to go sing these songs. I need to sing all these songs that I've written and the new ones that may come out of this. I do have peace that I'm, I'm supposed to go do that. But that song, Cinderella, which was written, inspired by Maria and Stevie Joy, my two youngest daughters. One night I wrote it after they wanted me to dance with them, and I it was late, and I told them just put their pajamas on. We're not dancing tonight. We're not going to the ball. We're not going to, Cinderella ball or any of that. Take off your cute Disney princess costumes and put on your pajamas and let's go to bed. And they were wanting to dance with their dad. And I felt very bad after I sat down and got them in bed and thought, man, I just blew it. I missed a moment. I could have danced with my girls, take 5 minutes. And instead I was just grumpy and tired and, irritable. And so that's why I wrote the song Cinderella. So the idea that I would sing that song, I mean, I wrote it a year and a half before Maria passed away. And so I thought, gosh, that would just be too hard, not only for me, but for people listening to it. It's like, man, that is so sad, because the song says, the chorus says, I will dance with Cinderella while she is here in my arms, because all too soon the clock will strike midnight and she'll be gone. And I thought, man, I didn't have any idea when I wrote that song that the clock was going to strike midnight a lot sooner in a way that I never would have imagined. And she's going to be gone for the duration of this life on earth. That's just too hard. That's too sad. And I was on stage the first night back on stage after Maria passed away, and I was doing my set, and I got to the point where I would normally sing Cinderella, and I thought, you know what? I got to sing this song, but I'm going to sing it different tonight, because I wrote it because I missed a moment with my daughter that night, and I wanted to remember that, don't screw this up again. Don't keep missing these moments. And that's why I wrote the song. But that night on stage, I realized that, if I believe what I've been singing all these years, and what I'm holding on to right now that gets me through the next breath and the next day, it is a belief that if what God has promised is true, he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes. And the reason we love fairy tales, or the reason we love the story of Cinderella or any of those, just as human beings, is because there's something inside of us that says there is a happy ever after that's for real, not just a fairy tale. And it's coming, but we're just not going to see it this side of heaven. But can we keep believing that the happy ever after is called heaven? That's what Jesus made a way for us to know and have. And so I'm like, I'm going to sing this song believing that, and let this song come from that place now. It was an earthly sort of song up to that point, like just show up and be a good dad. But now it's a song more about, it's about that still, because I'm still here. I'm still on this planet, still trying to love my wife and, my kids. But it's even bigger now, because when I sing this, I'm singing it believing that I am going to dance with my daughter again. So I got to the end of the song, and at the very end, the last line of the song says, the clock will strike midnight and she'll be gone. And instead that night I just sang, and the clock will strike midnight. And I stopped, and I thought, I didn't plan it. I didn't prepare ahead, because it's probably one of the worst crafted lyrics I've ever done. It doesn't really even rhyme, but I just said, but the truth is, it's all too soon the clock will strike midnight. But the truth is, the dance will go on. And I thought, well, that's it. The dance doesn't end. And the fact of the matter is, I will dance again with my daughter. And so it became probably not probably, for sure, an even more important song for me at that point.
We can't. We can't even hear you talking about the two of us. I see my dad. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
That cuts so deep.
Yeah, buddy.
All right. I have to ask another question, or Troy and I will just keep sitting here crying. When you write about hope, are you preaching to yourself first?
Yeah, absolutely. All of my songs are preaching to myself. Every one of them. That's kind of, I mean, I feel sometimes like I'm sort of just cheating. It's like all I got to do is just write songs to myself and sing them for other people. But I'm like, this is really just taking a page out of my own journal. I mean, that's whether it's Cinderella, it's I Will Be Here. I wrote that song for my wife after my mom and dad went through a divorce. And I was like, I don't want this to happen. And I know my parents loved Jesus. They loved each other. And yet this thing has happened. So how do I not? Well, I'm just going to sing this song. And if I just keep singing it and keep promising and keep speaking it, and the more people I can sing it for, the more accountable I will be, to that. Um, I mean, songs like Cinderella, are those songs that are like, I'm going to keep messing it up. But if I have this song to keep reminding me, it will help, it'll keep helping me personally. And then I get to share it with other people, and people go, man, that has helped me as well. And for sure, my songs about hope, the more, you speak it. I mean, I know this is that simple little thing, but I'm simple minded. So it helps me, those kind of simple things that, like, how do we get it from here? Because I feel like I got so much here, but I want to live it from here. I want to get it into my heart. And that's where we really live out of, that's where it really changes. We can have a lot of knowledge and a lot of stuff up here. And, I remember somewhere somebody said, well, it's right here. It's the halfway point. We get it from our head, to our heart by speaking it, by declaring it, by saying it, and that is so true. And I think that's what, getting hope from just my head to my heart is by the more I can sing it and speak it.
You and your wife, Mary Beth, turned pain into purpose with the show Hope. How did serving orphans help your own family?
Yeah, that has been an amazing part of our story and our journey that we sure didn't see coming. We were parents of 3 kids, and I was so busy and going and traveling, and as I've already shared with you guys, trying to figure out, am I doing any of this well or doing it right? And my wife feeling overwhelmed. And when our oldest daughter, came home from a trip to Haiti, spending time with kids that didn't have a family, moved by that. She's 11 years old and comes home and says, Mom and Dad, I think God's telling me that we're supposed to adopt some kids that need a family, because we got room, in our home, and there's empty chairs at our table, and, room in my bedroom to put another bed, and I'll share, all my stuff, we need to do this, and it was just like not anywhere on our plans for what we were going to do or supposed to do. And, but God changed our hearts, and we started to pray about it. And it's a crazy story again and I think, so much of what I've learned about just who God really is, not just my ideas of who he was when I was a kid, as kind of the, the guy walking around with a clipboard, and a scowl on his face, peering over his glasses down on his nose, waiting to give you a bad grade or a check mark if you just happen to do something good enough to go, maybe a half a smile and go, okay, that'll pass. We're watching this show, Special Forces. If you guys ever watch that show, I don't know why this came to my mind, but I'm like, I think probably growing up like a kid thinking, God's about like most of those guys in that thing, like, what's wrong with you? Get it together. And maybe if you don't fail, maybe if you somehow get through the test, you get almost a smile. I mean, those guys never crack a smile. They never give you a good job. They might barely kind of give you that was okay. And that means like, man, I just crushed it. Like that idea of God in some weird, strange, way in my head. But to realizing through our journey, especially of adoption, that God is so much wilder and so much, I use the word winsome, just to say God just, I just learned a lot about, how much more God is saying, hey, I am not mad at you. And I'm not even telling you, you should do this because that's what good Christians do. It's more in a sense of God saying, I just want you to experience and know me. And this is an invitation. The guy who wrote the songs about the great adventure, it's like, if you really want to take the great adventure, then I got this crazy idea. And I'd love for you. I think of it more, and I've said this before, like a father to a son saying, hey, I got an idea. I got something, and it's crazy and it's kind of scary. And now you'll be okay if you'll just stay with me. You'll be more than okay. You will lose your mind, and it'll be awesome. But but it'll be scary. And you don't have to do it. And I'm not going to be mad at you if you don't. But I just want to spend time with you, and I want you to experience this if you'll come. There's more of that invitation from the heart of God. And I think our journey of adoption has been so much more of that. It has been obviously painful and hard and broken our hearts for this season of life on this earth in a way that we never would have imagined, but it's also filled our hearts up with so much more. And yes, I feel like it has been a huge part of our own healing and our own understanding of the grace of God, by walking through, this adoption journey, not only ourselves, but through Show Hope, where we get to be involved in, tens of thousands of other families' stories of adoption. And that all has been such a important part of our own faith journey.
My next question was actually on this too. Adoption has been a big part of your family story and theology. What have your daughters from China taught you about the heart of God? I also want you to know I was adopted, so this part of your story really resonated with me.
Wow. I did not know that, Tim. That's amazing. And I think there's so many things running through my mind to answer that question, but to try to put it in some sort of succinct answer. I think having our daughters who were born in China, don't look anything like us, not our blood running in their veins, not our DNA, whatever. And yet to not see them in any way different from our biological children. I think one of the gifts that we have as parents of both children who did biologically come from us, and then those who were not born, from my wife, and is that we have been given this incredible, deeper understanding of when we talk about God being our Father and we being His sons and daughters and His children. That's like this mystery sort of, is that just the language that the Bible uses, or how can that really be? And it was standing in a hallway in China and a hotel where we first met our daughter, that she's put in our arms, and my wife would say it, and I've said it many times and written songs about it. There was never in my life a more tangible moment of sort of an aha moment where I felt like this is as close to that mystery that I write songs about, that I try to get from here to my heart, all of that. There's nothing that I'll ever experience that will be more tangible of what that really is that God has done for us, for me, than holding this little girl who 30 seconds before she was put in our arms, she was an orphan, didn't have a name. I mean, she had a generic name the orphanage had given her, but no identity, no future, no hope. And then in this moment, she's put in our arms, and all that changes. And now she is ours, and nothing, everything that's ours is going to be hers. And my wife would have said, if someone would come and said, "Oh, sorry, we made a mistake," or "Here, we're going to take her back," my wife said it would have been over my dead body. It's like, no, that's nothing is going to change this now. This is my daughter. This is as much bone, blood and flesh and blood of mine as any child. And that is, I think, the taste of the gospel that I wouldn't have ever known any other way than through that experience. And yeah, it's been an incredible gift.
I think, I think it's the least I've ever talked in an episode. I still can't get over the whole thing, but oh man, this is awesome. It's so powerful. I see
Thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
Well, part of that's because I don't my answers are kind of long, and I realize that. But thank you guys for.
No, it's perfect. I'm like, this is yeah, wow, it's so powerful. You're a much stronger man than me. I'll say that.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
You've written love songs, lullabies, worship anthems, and laments. Which kind of song cost you the most to write emotionally?
Well, for sure, the laments were the ones that were the weightiest and cost the most. The love songs, come just kind of out of the sort of I guess it all comes from the overflow. Honestly, it's either the overflow um, of joy and good things that will become love songs. Although to be fair, I Will Be Here, as I mentioned, came from a lot of pain. Honestly, I think probably all the songs are tethered somehow to the pain and the loss. That's where, at least where probably the most powerful songs come from. But they come out of the overflow. Sometimes the joy, the overflow. If I think about a song like The Great Adventure, that was just kind of with this sense of, wow, the grace of God is that good? Is that really true? Could it be that true? Because if it is, what it feels like right now is, man, the walls have come down, and this weight that I was feeling that was kind of, crushing me is gone, and I'm just feeling this sense of, let's go, let's do this. Wherever it goes, God's got it, and I'm just going to trust Him and let's go. Um, and but it's always out of the overflow. But I think for sure those laments and those songs that have come from that place that have cost me the most to get to that place to write those songs for sure. But I would say those songs have been as important and have been as life giving as any songs that I've written, because those have been what have continued to keep me breathing and believing and being able to take the next step and the next breath.
Do you have a favorite type of song to write?
You know what? I don't really. Whatever, I'd say my favorite song is probably the song I'm writing at the moment, because it's wherever I am. And if I didn't have that ability, and I don't know, I mean, I say that to be honest, sometimes I think, am I going to keep writing songs going forward? Because I have a lot of songs that say a lot of the things that I've lived over the years, and those songs I love to sing now, and it isn't like I'm just, dredging up the leftovers. It's like that song right now for me today. I sing a song, Be Still and Know That I Am God. It's one that it's a prayer that I wrote out of the Psalms 46:10. And it's like I can sing that song every day because I need to keep hearing that. I need to keep telling myself that, be still, chill, so, just take a breath and remember that God is on the throne. He is in control, and you are not. And you don't have to be, So I can keep singing that song. But so sometimes I think, am I going to just? I don't have any strong pressure feeling like I got to keep writing songs. Now I'm kind of blessed that I'm at a place to say, there's no pressure from a record label. When's the next record getting turned in, or whatever. So I get to enjoy just if a song comes out and like I got to say that, I got to write that, I'll write it and sing it. And but I'm grateful because if I didn't have that, that outlet, that place, I don't know. I think sometimes, again, selfishly in a way, having that gift and that ability to be able to put those thoughts and those whatever I'm living to those words, set it to music and be able to set and play the song, is probably it's as great of a gift for me to be able to do that for my own heart as it would be for anyone else.
Music changes with the decades, but what stayed sacred about the way you write?
Yeah, I have been people have said over the years, of my music that, they said, what's changed? What's changed? What's stayed the same? And obviously the way music, even the way it's listened to, the way the way it is created, I go all the way back to my first record was actually a record. It was a vinyl disc. Now you make those because it's cool and retro and vintage. My son's band, they have a band called Colony House, and they're like, Dad, we're putting our new record out on vinyl. That's really cool. And I'm like, well, I've been doing that for years. That's no big thing. My first record was on vinyl too. That was because it was the only way you listened to music then. Or a cassette tape. I had cassette tapes too. And then CDs came along, and we thought, well, that's it. That's all. That's the end of story. Now, you don't even people like CDs. Kids go, what is that? What do you do with this? And which is crazy. So I've lived through all of that, and now people don't really listen to albums anymore. They listen to songs. Artists like myself still love making albums, full albums, the whole journey, the whole package. But music has changed so much. And the way I've written it from the first albums that I made through the years, using technology and using all those things, trying to be a student, trying to still learn and grow and listen to music and kind of go, okay, what's the current language that the culture is speaking? Now, there's a point when obviously it's like, okay, I'm not, I don't need to do that. That would not be authentic. But what can I take of what's happening in music and still be authentic, but also be growing and changing and evolving and all of those things. But I think with all of that, people have asked me, and I'll just answer it like this, people say, man, do you have a favorite song? And I thought a minute ago, Troy, you were going to ask that, but you said favorite kind of, way to write music or kind of song to write. But when people say, do you have a favorite song? I always say no, because they're all special. They all mean something, unique at a different season of life. But I often say there's one song, if I had to pick one, that I would sing if I just had enough, time on the clock, enough breath in my lungs. What's the one song that I would sing? And I always say it's a song that was on my very first album. I don't claim it to be the greatest song I wrote, the best crafted song. It's very simple, actually. But the song is My Redeemer is Faithful and True. And the reason I always say that's the one song that I would pick is because I feel like every other song I've written, all the different things I've said over the years, they all kind of are summed up in that one song, as simple as it is. All of these different songs about all these different things are basically held together by this one truth, that God is faithful. And he has been faithful in my life. And that's what I hope all of my songs ultimately communicate to people.
I wouldn't ask that what your favorite song is, because I'm afraid you'd say Cinderella, and I wouldn't be able to talk to you.
and then you'd be crying. Don't say that. Don't say that.
I opened it in another tab. I can't wait to listen to it. And I'm dreading listening to it.
Have you? Do you know the song Cinderella yet? Have you heard it?
I'm right when we hang up. I'm going to listen to it. I'm terrified.
Oh yeah. Be very afraid. You should. Yeah. It is one that most dads are like, man, I don't know whether to hug you or to just punch you right in the face because this song really messes me up. I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, I can't wait to listen. Stephen, one thing I find so funny about you is that you've sold millions of records and still say you're just a Kentucky boy with a guitar. How do you keep humility when the numbers get that big?
Well, as I said earlier, I think the biggest person I have to credit in that is, my wife, Mary Beth, my bride of 41 years. And it's not always been fun. There have been a lot of times where I just really wish that she thought I was a bigger deal than she does sometimes. I'm like, don't you don't you realize? I mean, I'm wanting like Grammy awards. Can I get a little respect here? And thankfully, I mean, I'm very sincere when I say, um, you know, for better and for worse, sometimes to just have her unimpressed. But you know what? I have really also, again, it's hard to answer these kind of questions. It's always funny because I feel like, yeah, let me talk about how humble I am. Let me talk about my humility. I'm kind of proud of my humility. It's one of my greatest gifts. Um, but but I do feel like early on that I just knew if I was going to have any chance, I needed to surround myself with people who were very unimpressed with me, and at least unimpressed with my accolades or music, success. And again, praying and then just God's grace. I really say it's God's grace that He has put people in my life who have been that way and still are. People that are just kind of like, either others who do what I do, who so it's not to them, a big deal, or people who just don't really care that much. They care a lot more about Mary Beth and me as friends and just people that they want to do life with. Um, that's been huge and a huge gift, in my journey, and just having those people that that help keep your feet on the ground, and I'm sure it's all of the stuff too that I've talked about. It just those little voices of kind of going, man, probably the struggle on the other side sometimes of believing that, I mean, recently, this is a good example. You mentioned, Tim, in the introduction, the Grand Ole Opry, uh, being inducted as a member of the Grand Ole Opry, which was a dream that my dad had when he was a kid, and that someday he would just play on the Grand Ole Opry. Which the really cool thing was when I got inducted, I got to bring my dad out on stage to sing with me on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry at 86 years old. So he made it to the Grand Ole Opry, and he got to come with his son who was being inducted as a member. So it was a huge moment, full circle moment for my dad. And but even in that, it's like that was a dream that my wife had for me, and she championed that. She's like, my husband, he started out in the Grand Ole Opry singing when I was 18 years old the first time. She's like, that should happen. He should be the first Christian artist to get inducted as a member in the Grand Ole Opry. That was like her goal, her dream, her belief in me. So I think just, gosh, seeing how God's put those people in my life, is, as much as anything, it is just reminds me of God's faithfulness and His grace.
Is there a topic or moment that you've always wanted to turn into a song but never have?
You know what? I have a song that I have not released. So I guess the answer is sort of yes, but actually I wrote a song, for some friends who have had a son who actually took his life. Was bullied and had really battled with some mental illness, and so I did write a song for him, or not specific. It's not. It's kind of more, hit a story of him inspired by that, but kind of didn't want to, didn't feel right about just being so specific to his story. But, and I have family members, extended family, and a lot who have really battled with some mental illness and are currently. And that's probably a topic that, like I said, I've touched on it in this song and I haven't released it yet, but I'm trying to find the right time to release it. But that is something I've actually kind of written a few other ideas and haven't finished yet. But that just feels like something, especially the church, I feel like has done not a great job historically, always of addressing mental illness and really the tools. More and more of that has happened, thankfully. But yeah, that's probably an area and a topic that I feel like um, I might write some more songs about in the future.
Why do you think you've hesitated about this topic specifically?
I think it's because um, I don't think I have. It feels so important and so weighty. And the songs that I have written, the reason I haven't released the one is I wrote it for this last album, and I had about 20 songs, and the record label, and we sat and picked the 12 that would go on the record, and then the others that would get released eventually. And that wasn't in the top 12, songs, not because it wasn't as good as the others. It was just for whatever reason, the ones that seemed to fit the first release of the album. But I think it's so weighty that it's like I feel this. I don't want to misspeak or say something or write something that is not as helpful as I want it to be. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's one of those things. It's so deep and so heavy that putting it, to music, just feels like it's a big task. And I probably have, every time I get into it, I'm like, that's probably not good enough yet, or something. So I don't know. I think it's just feeling the weight of it and wanting to, that's not something, and I mean, everything I write, I feel that to some degree, but it's sort of like, it's so complex too. Everybody's story is so different and so unique. But I'm a storyteller, and that's probably why this other song is just a story. I think just telling stories are, the best way to do that anyway. So, yeah, it's a good question. I don't really know why I haven't, other than I just probably I'm intimidated by it to some degree because it's not a lightweight thing that I want to just, I want to make sure I've really honored it in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I get what you mean. The Bible says beauty will rise from ashes. When did you first see that promise come true?
Our family, in the work of Show Hope, this is the first thing that comes to mind, and there have been many. I think standing, doing the work of Show Hope, particularly after the loss of our daughter, and seeing how God would use that story in the lives of other people, particularly related to caring for orphans, families that would come and say, hearing your story and even your story of loss of your young daughter, Maria, is what put on our radar as a family the idea of adoption. And even greater than that, as people began to pour into our family, out of the loss of our daughter through the work that we do with Show Hope, we started to receive gifts from people that said, we just want to help the work of Show Hope in memory and in honor of your daughter. And so we set up a separate fund called Maria's Miracle Fund. And it was out of that we were able to build and finish opening a facility in China in 2009 that we called Maria's Big House of Hope. And there at that place, we were able to care for several thousand children that were medically fragile, who were orphaned, and many who weren't going to survive otherwise, and some who still didn't survive even when we took them into care into the place that we call Maria's Big House of Hope there in China that we were able to build through as a result of those funds that we raised after losing Maria. And we were there for 10 years in China. Unfortunately, around 2019, things just got crazy relationally between Chinese government, our government, and the opportunity to do the work that we were doing there. We had to close the operations there and kind of exit our work in China just before COVID hit, which would have brought that to a screeching halt. So thankfully, we were able to do it over a period of time in a way that honored as best as we could the people there and our relationships there. But I still know that those 10 years there, in fact, we just had a reunion this past summer, a 10-year reunion of children that we had been able to care for. And they all came to Nashville, Tennessee, to Franklin, Tennessee, where we live. And we had a big reunion for these families and these children, because many of these children are now thriving in families that were barely surviving when we were able to take them in and help care for them. And so to see these families come, obviously tears in their eyes, and say, we wouldn't have our son, our daughter, our story, our family wouldn't be complete apart from, what God allowed you guys to do in China for that season of time. So that story keeps living and keeps, the ripples keep going out from that story, and it's been amazing. But I think that was probably one of the first moments where we were able to see the beauty beginning to come from the pain and from those ashes.
You become the first contemporary Christian artist welcomed into the Grand Ole Opry. What did that moment mean to you personally and to the genre you've helped carry?
Well, personally, and I've kind of alluded to it a little bit already, my dad's dream was to be a singer on the Grand Ole Opry. He was a kid listening to it. That was as big as music, the biggest stage you could ever hope to be on with the music that he loved. And as a result, that was the first music I heard when I was a kid, was music that you would hear on the Grand Ole Opry: country music, bluegrass music, folk music. And when I got to perform as a kid for the first time when I was 18 years old on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, my dad was there crying all the way through my song. Even though I forgot the words to my song on the Grand Ole Opry the first time, which is not a good way to start a career in music, especially on the Grand Ole Opry. And but it's a true story. But my dad laid his dream down to be a music artist, because in those days, you're talking in the 50s, 60s, when he was chasing that dream, you didn't have social media, you didn't have Spotify, you didn't have any of that. If you were going to make it music, you got in your car and you stuck all of your records in the trunk, and you just went from radio station to radio station trying to get your, record played. And you've all seen, we've seen the movies of the Johnny Cashes and the Elvises and all those guys who started that way. And my dad knew that if he was going to chase this dream, it was that really, or his family, because he wasn't going to be able to be home. And having grown up without a dad, and after he really gave his life to Jesus and decided to that was how he wanted to live his life, he laid his dream down to be on to chase the Grand Ole Opry stage, I guess. So when I got to be inducted as a member, and my dad got to walk out on that stage, and we got to sing together the song I mentioned earlier as my one song, "My Redeemer is Faithful and True." We actually sang that song on the Opry. And I was able to say, because of God's faithfulness, and even the decision that my dad made to be a father, to be in my life, that's why I would learn to love music and play music. And then here I get to stand on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry with my dad and with my son, and who is a great musician, and with my grandkids. They're all on stage together, and my mom and my wife, and we all got to come out on stage and sing "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" together, and which is a great song I grew up singing with my family. So that all was just kind of I called it a taste and see the Lord is good moment, because I really, that's one of those moments that you just really get a tangible taste of, man, I didn't know it could be this good. I'm surrounded by my family, getting to experience the highest level of achievement that I ever would have imagined as a kid. Very, very special. And for the genre, for, gospel music and Christian music, to get to be the representative to kind of bridge those two together, because obviously gospel music and country music have gone hand in hand together, since the beginning. As far as I've known, the earliest country songs. I mean, Johnny Cash wanted to be a gospel singer. He tried to get his record company to let him make gospel music, and they kept, telling him to make this other country music. It's always just been hand in hand. So I feel like for Christian music, that has obviously given me the platform that I've had to get to be the first guy to kind of bridge those two. It just, I don't know. Again, it's sort of beyond anything I could have imagined, to get to be the guy that would sort of get to build that bridge in a way.
That's beautiful. When you look out from the stage today, what do you hope your audience is hearing between the notes?
Well, I'll just say my one song, My Redeemer is Faithful and True. That's the thread that weaves every song and every story together. That's the one thing, after all my songs are faded out and people forget my name and my music, that will for sure happen. But that truth that God is good, that God is faithful, that he can be trusted. That's the one thing that I hope people will remember from my music, and will know as a result of the music that I've played and the songs that I've written.
Stephen, right before we started recording, I was talking to one of my friends, Damon, and he said he'd been to. I said I had to go. I was recording with you, and he's like, "You got to be kidding me! I've been to some of his concerts. I've been to this." He's like, "Do
No
you know
way.
the Steve?" He goes, "Do you know the Steve Saint story?" I have no clue what he's talking about. He said to ask you about that.
No way. Oh, really? Yeah, he must have been at that concert. Yeah. Your dad might know, Tim might know the story of Jim Elliot. In the 50s, there were 5 missionaries that went. They were all students at Wheaton College in Chicago, and they felt like God told them. They were young. Jim Elliot was I think, like a world-class wrestler. I mean, these guys were athletes. They were the top of the class, smart guys, but passionate about the message of Jesus Christ and taking that to an unreached people. And so they found out about this group of very savage, from what they understood, savage natives in Ecuador jungle called the Waodani tribe. And they felt like God told them they needed to go try to reach this tribe. And so one of the guys, Nate Saint, was an airplane pilot with a group called Mission Aviation Fellowship, flew a little Piper Cub. And so these 4 missionaries plus Nate Saint flew into the jungle, made contact with this unreached tribe. And, any interaction before, it had always ended up in people getting killed that tried to reach them, because they just didn't understand. They were kind of Stone Age people. And so these guys made contact, and it was friendly. And then they left, and they came back to try to make contact with, it was just with 1 or 2. But the second time they came back, what's now known is that the tribe had basically decided, or had thought that they were going to come and attack them and try to kill them. And so they killed the 5 missionaries. They attacked them instead, before they had a chance to be attacked. In their minds, they attacked and killed all 5 of the missionaries, including the airplane pilot, Nate Saint. And the wife of one of the men, Elizabeth Elliot, would go on to write the story called Through Gates of Splendor, telling the story about her husband, Jim Elliot, and the 4 other guys who were killed and martyred. It was a big national story in the 50s when it happened. A big magazine, Life magazine, which was a big publication, mainstream. It wasn't a Christian publication, told the whole story and wrote the story of these 5 men. They were speared to death and macheted to death by this tribe, just, protecting their own, as they thought. Well, over time, the wife, Jim Elliot's wife, Elizabeth, and the sister of Nate Saint, who was the pilot who was killed along with those men, one of the missionaries. Her name was Rachel Saint. They would go live with this tribe in the jungle. And Steve Saint, who was the son of one of the martyred missionaries, Nate Saint's son, would grow up with this tribe because they were eventually able to explain to them these men didn't come to harm you or to kill you. They came actually with a message of peace. They came to try to teach you about your creator, about God. And so it was an incredible story of transformation. This tribe, many of them became what they would call God followers. They began to understand the message that these men had tried to come to give them. And one of the six tribesmen who killed and attacked and killed the five missionaries would become basically like a grandfather to some of the grandchildren of the man that he killed, if you can follow all of that. It's a crazy story. It's an amazing story. And several years ago, I did a tour and told this story on my tour because I'd actually gone to the jungle and spent time with this tribe and went with the son, Steve Saint, whose father was killed by that tribe, and the kid who grew up living with this tribe that killed his dad. And one of the men who killed his dad would become like a dad to him. And it's just an amazing story of forgiveness and the power of God's love to change people. And I got to share that story on one of my tours, and I brought Steve Saint with me, the son whose dad was killed. And along with him, he would every night on stage introduce the man who killed his father, Minkai, and this little guy with the big lobes and the big plugs in his ears, looks like a straight out of the jungles of Ecuador, would come on stage and basically tell in his own language about the fact that he had killed someone bringing him this message, but now he believed this message. It changed his life, and it gave him a relationship with this man who was like a son to him. And it was an amazing story, and I got to share it every night on tour, and a lot of people were very, very impacted by that story. There was a couple of movies that have been made about it as well in recent years about that story.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Clearly, Christianity has been a constant theme of your amazing life. I was more of an undercover Christian until more recently. When I was initially diagnosed with ALS, I first asked, "Why me, God?" And it hurt me spiritually. Then I realized this was actually an opportunity for me to face my religion head on, the way I should have been all along. Have you ever faced a moment that made you question your faith or even just rattled it?
Yes. Well, I want to take an opportunity, Tim, to just thank you and bless you, and you, Troy, as well, for taking this platform. I get emotional. I think because of that reality that if we could script our stories, I sure know I would have scripted mine without suffering and without the loss of our youngest daughter, for sure. And I would take all the pain and all of the suffering out, because those are the places where in my flesh and my humanness, it's a pretty natural thing to say, God, why, why us? We've tried to do good things. We tried to, help rescue orphans, and this doesn't seem fair. That our family would carry this, have to carry this pain. And to answer the question, was my faith questioned and rattled, and absolutely, doubt is a part of the process. At least for me, I read just this morning, I think, in a devotion that my pastor sends out about Thomas, and we always think of him as doubting Thomas, but I'm so thankful that God didn't edit that out of the story. that he didn't take those kind of things out of the Bible, because those stories give me so much hope, that Jesus would show up and not slap Thomas across the face or say, "You idiot, why are you doubting?" He'd say, "Here, hey, let me show you my hands. You can touch it. You can." He knows he understands our struggles, our doubts, and he doesn't despise them, and he doesn't, um, lecture us. But he just says, "Hey, come, come and you can touch the scars in my hands. I am for you. I am with you." And and I think the more I've been able to understand that in those moments, God doesn't explain everything to us, and it brings us back over and over again to a place of just trusting. I wrote a song several years ago that just was from something that I've heard my pastor say over and over again. And finally, I wrote a song. Most of my songs are my pastor, Scotty Smith's sermons that I just ripped off and set them to music. But he just says, "God is God and I am not. God is God and I am not." And it's like, can we just keep believing that and remembering that? And so, yes, those doubts and those questions have absolutely been there. And yet, like you, Tim and Troy, by your side, and man, that blesses me as a dad with sons that I got to minister and do concerts with and tours with for years. Now they're off doing their own much cooler music than me, and I'm cheering them on, but with their band Colony House. But that was a huge gift for me, and one of the great gifts in my years of doing music was to get to work with my boys. And just I love seeing you guys do this together, and I'm so thankful, Tim, for you stewarding this season of your life, and knowing that it's always a song for me. Another song a few years ago I wrote called "Glorious Unfolding," that this is an unfolding story, and we are in this chapter that we're in right now. And to see you guys stewarding this chapter that you're in the way that you are, to give people hope that are going, why me? God, this seems unfair. And to see you choosing to take this moment in your story. And it is just a moment. It's just a blink of an eye, these light and momentary afflictions, that don't seem so light and momentary. And please know that I say that with all great respect and great sadness and grief, because it's not how it should be, that ALS should ever affect anybody's life, and especially not not you and not you guys and your family. But I'm so grateful for the way you are stewarding it, and the way you're choosing to say, "I want truth to shine in this moment in my life." And so, just thank you for that. Thank you for doing that.
Before we close, please brag about your family for a minute. What do you want your kids and grandkids to remember most about the man behind the songs?
Well,
Steven,
yeah.
let me jump in really quick, because I know you're a humble guy. I want you to know that he asked everybody that, so you're not going to be the first person to come on and brag about the family.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's I know we're probably over our time, and then you asked the one question I could talk for an hour or a day on, but I'll just say it like this. We, my wife and I, Mary Beth and I, it was 41 years of marriage, and we have just been blessed so much that we have our 5 kids that are still here on earth with us. Our Maria, who's with Jesus now 17 years, but all of our other 5 kids somehow, by God's grace, like hanging out with us and being with us. And That is no small miracle because listen, we have done everything wrong you could possibly do, and and yet somehow they still like to be around us. And they all live within about a 5 mile radius, which means that our 7 grandkids all are within 5 miles of us, so they're over at our house all the time, which is Mary Beth's greatest joy. She loves being Grammy to those 7, and I am Pop Pops, and that is my greatest uh, joy and greatest name. My favorite name I've ever been called is Pop Pops, and everybody calls me that now, all my kids and grandkids. Um, and but I mean, my son, like my oldest daughter Emily, she is brilliant. She's a master's in theology. She actually was the director of our organization, Show Hope, for 2 or 3 years. But her 3 girls, she just realized that I'm up till 1, 2 in the morning. She doesn't do anything halfway. She does it all the way. And so she couldn't do that and be the mama that she wanted to be. So she had to step back from being at the helm of our ministry, Show Hope. She was doing it brilliantly, but now she's an incredible advocate for orphans, and was just in the White House with the First Lady, and all of that, just advocating for adoption and orphans, and makes regular trips, doing things like that. She's brilliant. She's so gifted. Um, my 2 boys, Caleb and Will, and their band Colony House, and their other band, Two Car Garage. They've got a couple of different musical ventures. They're in the mainstream music world, but their faith is woven into their music, and they they've they're doing amazing, and they're in Europe right now on tour actually. But I'm so proud of those guys, and they make incredible music. So shameless dad plug, Colony House, check them out. You'll love them, I promise. Their music is amazing. And then Shoei, our daughter Shohana, our first of our 3 adopted, she is a child life specialist at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, the same place where our Maria was taken 17 years ago, and we walked through the darkest days. Now our daughter Shoei goes there 4 or 5 days a week to that very same emergency room to be with families in their trauma, in their moments of darkness and hopelessness, to help them and walk alongside them. And it's an amazing, beautiful picture of just how God can bring beauty out of the ashes, even her life and her story. Stevie Joy is a cheerleader at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. And we're getting to watch her in her 5th year. It's her final year as a master's, getting her graduate student, getting her master's there. But she's an amazing, world class, truly. She's a world champion. She's cheered for the U.S. team in the last 3 world competitions, and they've won gold. And so she's a national champion. Last year, Alabama won the national championship at co-ed cheer in Florida. So very, very proud of her. And then, as I said, our grandkids are just the most brilliant, talented grandchildren ever walk on the planet. I don't know how that worked out for my wife and me, but we didn't deserve that one, but we got them all. And just very, very, very blessed, very grateful.
It's funny, you might have the first one that's got a comparable situation. So I'm my dad's neighbor. My brother's 2 houses up the street. My sister's across the street. So 4 out of the 5 of us live within a 5-minute walk. And we've got
awesome.
11 grandkids. 10 of them are in the, people say the compound. 10 of them are right here. And it's funny too, because my dad's Pop. So you're Pop, he's
Oh
Pop.
yeah, there you go.
So you guys,
there you go. Pop and Pop Pops. Yeah,
and
I love it.
I say to my parents, I'm like, it was cute when it was like a couple of grandkids. Now that it's 11, It's like a zoo over there.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. I know. Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
I would say that would be losing our daughter in a tragic accident at our home.
What was the happiest moment in your life?
Standing face to face with Mary Beth Chapman. I married a girl with the same last name, so I know that's weird, but I'm from Kentucky. Anyway, Mary Beth Chapman saying that I would be hers until death parted us, and hearing her say the same thing to me.
What are you most excited about?
My grandkids.
What advice would you give your younger self?
I think I would just tell my younger self to hang on for the wild ride and just don't stress out so much. It's just going to be okay. Just trust God and don't don't try to figure it out.
Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
There's a book called Love Kindness that not a lot of people know about that I really, really I loved it. It's a great book about just in a day and time when there's so much uh, conflict and you know uh, fighting, especially for people of faith. What's it going to look like to really live out our faith? And it's just a great book. It's stories, and it's really really a good book. Love Kindness by a guy named Barry Corey. That's a great one. And I just read another one recently called Theo of Golden. It's a fiction story. It's actually a self-published deal, but the guy is, you can find him. But it's Theo of Golden, and it's really it's a very great story. It's inspirational, but really good.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say thank you again to you guys. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for, I know this is not easy. I know doing a podcast sounds like your dad went maybe kicking and screaming in the very beginning, like, what do you want me to do? Another podcast, really? But I can say, and I speak for many, I'm very, very grateful that you guys have taken the time and continue to take the time to do this. I don't think you will not know until heaven, but this is having a tremendous impact in a lot of people's lives. So thank you, Tim and Troy. Thank you, guys.
Steven, I'm going to sneak in one last question.
Yeah.
At the end of every episode, we ask our guests, now you got to know us for a little bit, who are people that you know personally that you think we should try to get on as a future guest?
Oh gosh, man, that's one of those I'm gonna be thinking about for a while. Do you know Rob Pelinka? He's just I'm thinking in a sports world particularly, but Rob is a good friend of mine who's the general manager of the Lakers, and
Yeah.
he loves Jesus. He is a really great, great guy, very thoughtful, and I think he would be great. Another great friend of mine who actually played football, Ernie Conwell. He's a great guy. Again,
Mhm.
loves Jesus, and I just love his heart. So he'd be a guy that I think y'all would enjoy talking to. Great. Doesn't have necessarily the name recognition in that way, but he played for the Rams. He beat the Titans when we were our Tennessee team the one time we went to the Super Bowl. So I'm kind of mad at him about that. But other than that, he's a great guy.
Stephen, thank you for the melodies that have carried faith through the fire and for showing us what worship looks like when the spotlight fades. Your life reminds us that love can sing through loss, that beauty really can rise, and that hope is still worth writing about. May God bless you, Mary Beth, and your family, and may the adventure keep going.
Amen. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks so much for doing this, Steven. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Absolutely.